daughter, the eldest one, was there probably like 12 or so. So in a way, I guess we shocked a bit. No, not even. Yeah, probably more like 10ish. But she was into Linkin Park because I was blasting Linkin Park every time we were driving, right? Because I had all the CDs and all of that. So when they came to Hong Kong, she was like, "Oh, Dad, I want to come with you." And my wife, she's not really a hard rock fan, but nevertheless, she tagged along and joined. I guess more for lack of confidence in my ability of controlling my daughter. Exactly. During the
Episode number 7. Today we have Luca Derlin with us. He works at Deutsche Bank and is the head of private banking in Luxembourg. Welcome.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You guessed it right.
Yeah,
Nice job.
Yeah, I tried many times in my head and works well.
So we start off usually with a simple question. Who are you today? How would you define Luca?
How I define Luca is a guy who loves his job, who loves his family, who's really passionate about most of the things that he's engaged into. Life is short. We need to live it to the max. Leave nothing to chance. Take ownership of this and make the best of it.
Wow.
Well, I didn't expect that.
Yeah. Usually it's shorter and easier, but I like that. So maybe let's start from the beginning. Where are you from? And tell us more about you.
Okay. So I was born in Genova. I spent there my childhood and all the way up until I finished university. After university, I started my professional career in McKinsey. So I moved to Milan, where I spent the first 5 years of my professional life with a short break of 1 year to go to INSEAD for my MBA in 2001.
Where?
INSEAD, Fontainebleau.
Okay.
I don't know
Maybe
it.
don't?
No.
No.
I'm ignorant, sorry. INSEAD.
INSEAD. So it's a Master of Business Administration
Okay.
based in Fontainebleau out of Paris.
Ah, okay. I missed the French.
It's pretty good.
Okay.
It's pretty good. Yeah. I would say so. No, it's been a great experience. It was 1 year, very intense. It's one of the most international MBAs because there's plenty of nationalities and the attendance is very diverse in that respect. It's also pretty intense because it's one of the few MBAs which is only 1 year instead of being 2. So it tends to be very intense with 27 plus exams that you need to give in the course of 10 months. And you need to juggle that with, I would say, a pretty intense social life. Instead, it's also very renowned for the diversity of activities on an extracurricular basis. And so, no, definitely, it was a memorable year, which left a lot of friends, a lot of network. And every time you go afterwards in your life, there will always be somebody who used to be in a course or in your graduation. And it's good to reconnect and have somebody to tap into throughout the course of your life. So 1 year, one stint, going back to McKinsey for a couple of additional years after my MBA. Until then, in 2004, I was tapped up by Deutsche Bank to take a role in London. And so started my professional career outside of consulting and into the real world, as I call it, in the financial services industries. And so the past 17 plus years, I've been with Deutsche Bank in a number of different locations and capacities across divisions.
A loyal man, I would say, right? 17 years, it's...
Yes, at times I surprise myself about how long I managed to stay, but I have to say, in the end, with all the difficulties and complexities that an organization like that tend to have, nevertheless, I always find Deutsche Bank a great place to work. It has a very entrepreneurial spirit. It always catered well for me, being a very impatient personality, and I was given the ability to move from job to job, jurisdictions to jurisdictions over the past several years. So it was great in that respect.
And let's get back a bit.
Let's
when
rewind.
you were at McKinsey.
Yeah.
How come you decided to pursue an MBA during your career? Don't you think it was like a bit too early, or you just wanted to have this experience abroad?
Well, ironically enough, one of the key decisions for me to choose McKinsey as, let's say, preferred first job was exactly the fact that as part of your development program, you're expected to have an MBA very early in your life.
Okay.
So when I did my, let's say, due diligence back then and say, okay, my ambition is at some point to go to a nice MBA. What is the best way to get there? If you go through a, let's say, normal course of action, you would probably have to spend 5 to 10 years in any regular industry and develop your experience there. Differently, if you go to a consulting company like McKinsey, for example, after the first 2 years of an analyst, if you're not fired, of course, you will be expected to go to an MBA and then come back as an associate on the back of it.
What was your role back then at McKinsey?
Back then, I was an analyst. So it's the entry level after you graduate from any university.
Okay.
So you work as part of a larger team with a long hierarchy of people who are senior to you in the form of associate, engagement manager, associate principal, partner, director, who will give you, let's say, direction and demands on deliverables that you need to take care of. And it is a pretty intense, but also very rewarding experience because since early on in your life, you're exposed to very complex type of situations. You're exposed to senior management of high-profile companies, and therefore it's a really strong start in terms of being able to learn, to develop, and to grow in your career.
Okay, so you think that after you moved to Milan, then you went in France, do you think that was the, let's say, the step that you needed then to go again abroad in London?
So going abroad, it happened more by chance than by design. For me, the key point at that moment was, you're happy with where you are, McKinsey at the point, but at the same time, you need to grow into something else. I felt that for me, consulting wasn't something which I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I like more to own my own things, to own my own team, to have a more long-term oriented, let's say, objective and deliverables, rather than jumping from client to client, project to project, location to location. Plus, by that time, I had a young daughter who was 2 years old. Working hours at McKinsey are not exactly soft. I was kind of working 110 hours a week. So time for the family and for my little one was pretty scarce. And so it happens that, and by then, my last project, I was working in Turkey. Because the more you get senior in McKinsey, the more you're expected to develop an international profile, to manage a team. And so in that particular project, I was the only Italian abroad working based in Istanbul on a client that one of our clients had acquired in the Turkish territory. So life was pretty brutal. So it happened that by chance, I received calls from a couple of headhunters, one in the US and one in the UK. And so I took a week off to go and take interviews. And as part of the interviews that I undertook in London, I called a friend of mine, former colleague McKinsey as well, who had moved to London, who had started working in Deutsche Bank. And I told him, Fabrizio, I'm coming over for interviews with another company. Why don't we meet up for lunch and we have a chat? And so when he learned that I was actually considering leaving McKinsey, he said, well, if you're leaving McKinsey, you should come to Deutsche because it's actually a great place, and I think you should really consider.
What year was that?
That year was 2004.
Okay, so it was really good years for the banks and everything.
It was good years, and
we're making a lot of money.
Banks, yes and no. In fact, when I joined Deutsche Bank in 2004, that is the year in which the bank undertook a large restructuring program, and in fact, it was public information, so nothing that I'm, let's say, putting out there that could compromise us. But it was when Joe Ackerman came to power, right? And he was the CEO of the bank. And for 2005, he promised a return on equity of 20% to the investor community. So behind the scene was that in order to achieve those targets, there were quite a number of very demanding initiatives. part of which there was quite a large downsizing program to the tune of 10% or so of the population in those days. And therefore, on one side, you may say that was on the ramp up after the dot-com bubble had burst and all the way up to 2008 global financial crisis, so just before the midpoint, let's say, of that trajectory. But nevertheless, profitability was not necessarily at the level where senior management or the financial community may have expected. So life was not that simple either, despite you may think otherwise.
You were in London during the 2008 financial crisis.
I was in London for a part of it, because that was also the year in which my global head at the time, who was based in New York, and back then I was head of strategy for capital markets business, he asked me, Luca, I think I need your help to develop and build up our Asia franchise. And I need somebody to bring over the way we do things in, let's say, mature economies and headquarters into Asia. And so I moved from London to Hong Kong to take the role of Chief Operating Officer for our Asia capital markets business. So in August, I moved from one location to another. And so it wasn't, again, necessarily particularly easy time because, again, on the back of the financial crisis, the whole world came down. And guess what? We had, in that case, to restructure a third of the team that we had currently over there. The good news is that that crisis proved to be, in a way, reasonably short-lived because we then were able to rebuild the team, and in a matter of 2 years, right, we went back to making as much revenue as it had never been the case before, and the team became even grew even larger than it was before at my time of arrival. So I guess that, as it often happens, maybe the bank reacted in a bit of a forceful manner, and in light of the financial crisis and without certainty on how fast things will come back, right, it was decided to make sacrifices in terms of job reductions that then, given that the war came back in force immediately afterwards, right, we had to rehire and rebuild.
At the same time, I think the financial crisis, the change of location, you had also a family that I think that you had to pay attention to.
No, indeed. I have to say, the family is always a key, let's say, element for me. And back to your question before, when you say, why do you move from McKinsey to banking? People often smile when they ask me, and generally tend to say, I decided to go into investment banking because I wanted to improve my standard of living, my quality of life, right? And for the, let's say, people who are not familiar with the environment or only hear the stories about investment banking, they will say, you're crazy, right? Because you're going to investment banking. But for somebody who moves from 100 plus hours a week to something like 60, 70 hours a week, that's already a walk in the park, right? And so even when you discuss with your friends or you have family gatherings and stuff, you say, oh, look, you're crazy, you're working that hard. But in relative terms, it was a major win. I managed to regain my weekends. Round-the-clock nights were no longer an option, right? So again, it was a comparatively speaking, very easy sailing in terms of work-life balance.
So you reduce almost at half your working hours when you moved to London, and then Hong Kong.
Yeah.
In Hong Kong, was similar to London in terms of working hours, or what was like the mentality on the workplace, the environment?
So in terms of working hours, I have to say, I pretty much tend to work those hours, no matter what, irrespective of the job, which is also probably a function of the fact that you need to stop yourself at some point, because otherwise you can always keep working and working and working. At the same time, going below a certain amount will never allow you to cover all the things that you want to take care of. And if you are in a certain type of position, there will always be quite a demand on your side and a large audience of people that you need to work with and take care of, and a large number of deliverables that you want to be able to do something about. So that's more of a, let's say, personal. Probably there are people who are clever, smarter, and better than I am, and they manage to achieve what I do in 60 hours in 45. Chapeau to them. Clearly, I've not been able to crack that yet. Maybe growing senior and getting smarter, I will also get faster at some point. But for the time being, I need to admit defeat on that front. back to Hong Kong. Hong Kong, it's been a great experience. I loved it. It was 5 years of paradise. Yes, working hours and were tough, but the environment was simply phenomenal. We had a blooming business, apart from the very early start in which we suffered the situation which I just described before. But after the, let's say, initial phase, it was a really, really successful story. So we managed to create a team with great spirit and with great outcome. Hong Kong is a super international city with a vibrant expat community. So it's really work hard, play hard type of environment. You live in these big buildings which are 30, 40, 50 stories high, 3-4 towers. So in a way, you live in a community which can be easily 500, 1,000 people as part of the same complex, which tend to revolve around all of the activities which are part of that complex per se. You have your swimming pool, you have your gym, you have your tennis court, your squash court, the playing area for the kids. So it tends to become, in a way, a micro universe where people really bond together. And it's very easy to connect. The other thing, all the expats have many things in common, right? You're not local. You don't belong there, in a way, in the traditional sense of the word. You have kids who go all to the same schools, all to the same rugby team, football team, club, you name it. And so the ability to network, get close together and live together, it's really easy. And it gives you a phenomenal life experience.
Well, we feel like your description of Hong Kong is really similar for our view of Luxembourg.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, it's like everyone.
You mean the 50-story buildings, or?
Well, I live on the ground floor, but I'm looking forward for an upgrade. No, but yeah, for me, your description is what I think about Luxembourg. Never been to Hong Kong, but I believe you because I had a friend that he was an English teacher there, and he said, "Bro, the life there is crazy. Everyone is expats, and they just go out. They want to meet new people." In fact, I think he left because it was too crazy for him. But I believe it. And so, when you moved to Hong Kong, you actually got promoted.
I was promoted before.
You were promoted before.
I just changed job. Yeah.
Okay, you were like obliged to, or was your choice?
No. Well, the good news is that obliged is a big word, and even it was my choice in a way. I've always been very open-minded. I always wanted new challenges. I always wanted new life experiences. So when my boss offered me the opportunity, we jumped on a plane with my wife. We visited Hong Kong for a week. We did our, let's say, on-the-ground due diligence. And I have to say, it was early June week with one of those not very favorable weeks in terms of storm season. And so it was raining most of the time. It wasn't a particularly pleasant experience during those 5 days. But nevertheless, we said, listen, let's give it a go. Let's try, right? We never lived outside of Europe. It's going to be an enriching experience for us. It's going to be an enriching experience for our kids, right? We have a return ticket in the sense that if we don't like it, we can always come back to London after 2 years or so. So let's go. And then the story turns that you don't want to come back. And it becomes such a great place, right? And I was asked at least 3 times to come back to Europe to take some other jobs, which were not exactly my dream job, let's say. So I politely declined in a way that fortunately allowed me not to get fired in the process. But then when there was a fourth opportunity that I was put in play to come back to London, and at that point the job also made sense, at that point we said, okay, let's go back to what I used to define to my wife, the real world, right? Okay. Because I always told her, let's enjoy what we have here, right? Because this is not the real world, and at some point we'll have to come back. And so that parenthesis, in a way, closed. But in the back of my mind, maybe, why not? If there will be the opportunity to retire there, assuming that there's enough of a, let's say, pension pot to be able to tap into the real estate market in Hong Kong, which is pretty crazy, that would be a dream come true.
Yeah.
And actually, how the discussion with your, I mean, not discussion, but yeah, let's call it discussion with your wife to move to Hong Kong. How did it go? Like you discussed before, you decided together, or you said, "My dear, we're moving to Hong Kong."
No,
Or
I have to say, I'm lucky enough to have a wife and a woman that I'm spending my life with whom there is a very transparent, candid, and clear dialogue. Luckily, we have many, let's say, things in common when it comes to way of life, interests, passions, and desire to explore and do new things. And as long as the, let's say, dialogue is managed in a considerate manner, right, it's unusual that no will come as an answer. I've had my fair share of those, don't get me wrong. In fact, when I came back from Hong Kong to London in 2013, and that was in August, then my boss at the time, literally, January comes 4 months later, he tells me, "Oh, Luca, by the way, I think it would be great because I really need somebody to take care of something, and I would really like if you could please move to New York." At which point, of course, I went back home. I had a conversation with my wife on the topic, but again, the reaction was not as positive because rightly so. And in fairness to her, she said, "We just moved 4 or 5 months ago. We put the kids into new school.
You had two
Started a new
kids at the
process."
time.
No, at the time I had 3 kids.
3 kids.
I already had the 3
So
kids.
between London, Hong Kong, London, you had 2 kids.
So no, before going to
So I
London,
remember the first
had,
one
the
that
first
you had
one
at
was in Milan.
McKinsey.
The first one
Yeah.
I had before, exactly, while I was in Milan and McKinsey. I had my second child, a son, who's now 16, in London.
Okay.
And then we had the little one, our third one, who's now 12, in Hong Kong.
Oh, whoa. So you had 3 different kids born in 3 different countries.
Indeed. So that's why when in February my current boss asked me, "Look, I think your next career step should be to go to Luxembourg because that's a platform where we really have big plans and we need your help and we would like you to take care of that." Right? I came back home. We had a nice conversation with my wife, but again, luckily enough, we both were in violent agreement that there would not be a Lux baby, which again, it made the decision pretty easy given that we already have a handful with the 3 that we have, and we're not exactly in our prime age anymore. But again, it was a relief on both sides. I think that none of us decided to put a flag on the ground with a baby in Lux territories. And we're happy enough with the 3 that we have, and it is good as it is.
Yeah. But since when you're here?
So I moved physically with the family in August 21.
Okay.
So it's just over
Freshman.
5 months. Yes, exactly. I'm a newbie. I'm a newbie to Luxembourg. There's still clearly a lot to explore and to learn. Unfortunately, the first few months probably have not been the most conducive, right, to exploring, given that due to all of the current restrictions, there's been a combination of lockdowns, inability to go out and really connect as much as you would like. But we're very keen, let's say, to go into the local reality and be able to connect as we've done in any other place that we've been. Also, the good news, I guess, is the first few months have been pretty intense in terms of finding your place and moving in, unpacking, building your wardrobes, setting up all the right things. So the good news is, again, we've done all of that. By now, we're cleared. My wife also has been pretty busy because she was working most of the weekends in order to gain her certificate as a yoga teacher.
Okay.
And she is currently in London for the final graduation of that particular degree. So we put behind our backs, I would say, most of the to-dos things that we needed to clear in order to say, hey, we're settled, we're good to go. And so we're looking forward for more of the, let's say, spring season to come. Hopefully, less restrictions in terms of ability to move around, connect, and meet people, and finally get into the flow of the city and getting to learn the reality of the
as
Luxembourg
far as
life.
you're here, you're happy with the country, you like here.
We are happy. I mean, it's a place which seems to be relatively easy to live. everything is very convenient, right? Having the luxury of door to door, jump on a car and go to work in less than 15 minutes, I think it's something that only few locations can offer.
Yeah. You live in Luxembourg City, or you?
I live in
outside?
Luxembourg City, in
Okay.
Mer.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
So,
Nice area.
You work in Kirchberg, so yeah, 15 minutes here there.
exactly, especially the time of the day in which I jump on a car and there's literally no traffic. So it's a
What
super
time you go
fast.
to work?
Well, what time I go to work is probably around 8:30. But before going to work, I go to the gym every morning.
Okay.
So I leave home, I don't know, 6:15, 6:20. So
why.
at the time, there's hardly any traffic.
Yeah.
So
Just the German.
We're getting
Okay. Yeah, we were talking about Luxembourg. We moved to Luxembourg when we left. When you left, we were in London. Now we went in Hong Kong. We had a
it's
child.
it's a
and
bit
then
more
we come back.
it's a bit more foggy right now. That's why we moved back to Luxembourg.
Okay.
No, one thing that I was wondering is like while moving with kids from one city to another, I don't know, what was in your mind that it's better to stay, especially I guess moving from London to Hong Kong, to stay in Europe because you're closer to your parents and their grandparents, or because at the end, I mean, Hong Kong you spent quite a lot of years, so.
yeah, why? Ultimately, job is what drives decisions and priorities. And as long as the job is in a place which is fine for a family, right, then we're very open and keen, let's say. For us, the primary point is always new experience, right, new challenges. How many kids in their life had the opportunity to experience different cities? I've always been fascinated. For example, in London, we have a very dear friend of ours. She's Venezuelan. She married to an Italian. She's Venezuelan, but then of a Swiss father. So she ended up growing good time in Switzerland, but also traveling different locations around the world because he was in a senior management position for a multinational firm. Long story short, she speaks something like 5 languages. She's lived in the States. She's lived in Europe. She's lived in Asia. And the level of, let's say, culture, the level of intellectual flexibility, the level of exposure that people like that have had to from the world, right? It's, in my view, incomparable. There are some people who are very static. They value being born and raised and living all of their life in one place. That doesn't necessarily marries up well with the values that my wife and myself have. So luckily enough, we've been given opportunities, and so it would be a shame to pass on anything on that.
Yeah. And actually something else I was really curious about is like more work-related stuff. But I mean, sometimes, you know, we work in audit, so we work quite a lot of hours, but like hearing, I mean, listening to your story and hearing that you work like 100 hours per week and even more, how are you coping with it? Like, what was driving you? What was your daily life to say, okay, I have to keep going on? And
well, there are different different stages of your life, right? Back then, it served me right at the point in my life. I was in my late 20s, right? I had the clear objective of starting to work for what I consider to be a primary consulting company because I thought, and then it proved to be right, that would open for me many doors in my future professional career. So you're young, you're motivated, you feel like a hero because you're doing things that nobody in your peer group has actually had the chance or the luck of being exposed to. When you compare yourself and you speak with your friends, right, there's a clear element of, wow, you're doing something that I would like to be able to do it. I don't know how you do it. So in a way, there's an element of exclusivity and also of, let's say, ability to do something that not everybody seems to be prepared for. That comes with cost. It comes with sacrifice. It's not for everybody, and it's not forever. In fact, I could not contemplate having that kind of living standard at the point of my life where I'm now. Right. So I think there is a season for every part of your life. How you cope with things. Somebody may say, listen, again, you're not that young anymore, and still you're working a good, 10, 12 hours per day. How do you do it? I think it's again part of your motivation, right? I love my job. I cannot think of doing a job where I would wake up in the morning and would say, "Oh, gee, I need to go to the office again." Right? I hate it. I'm backward counting for the time I will be back home to have dinner tonight. No, that's not the case. If and when I will ever find myself in that position, I will do everything I can to change job. I found myself in that position in the reasonably recent past, few years ago, and that's why I actively try to move things around in order to move out of the position which I was at the time stuck into, and be able to go and do something which I had a passion for. Life is too short, as I was saying before, so it's a waste to waste it on something that you don't have an interest in or a passion for. So I'm lucky enough that I have something that I'm excited and happy about, and I don't look at the hours. So it just happens that if somebody in my team, if somebody, a client, someone on the product side, my boss or whatever, there's something to be done, I don't say, "Oh, it's late, I'm tired," etc. You just do it, you feel good about it, and you have the adrenaline pushing you through. And until you haven't done it, you just cannot go to sleep. At least that's me.
Yeah. And but in McKinsey, were you doing what is it called? Strategic
Management consulting.
Management consulting.
Yeah.
Was it related to banking or something
Yeah,
different?
I've always done pretty much FIG, which is financial services
Okay.
practice. There was only one exception just before the dot-com bubble burst in 2001, which, of course, telecom was the big thing and internet was the next big thing. So I had my stint for 3 months in a telecom project, but it really wasn't my cup of tea. So I, in a way, forced myself into try and do a project which was outside of the financial services space, just not to, let's say, potentially look backward later in the years and say, "Oh, you didn't give yourself a chance to see if you liked anything different from financial services." But that's a space which I was always very passionate about since when I was a very young kid, doing my own investment and stuff. And so that particular project was the further confirmation that there was no other place than financial services that I wanted to be into. And so, yes, I've always been in the banking space.
Okay. And while growing up, I mean, the young Luca in Genova, what was driving you at the time? Like, do you have passion for quantitative subjects, or was more other stuff? What?
No, probably more other stuff. I guess I was a young kid, right? Back then there was no internet. Back then there was more TV. There were papers, and you've developed this fascination for things in a less structured way. You're less bombarded by social media as it happens today, but there were probably certain elements which played a certain type of influence on me, right? So my mom tells me that when I was a kid, right, 6 years, 7 years, and a school teacher asked, "Okay, what do you want to be when you grow up?" My answer was, "I want to be a miliardario," which back in the days is I want to be a millionaire, but in the old Italian lira. And the point is, how do you get there, right? So then you need to try and see what is the way to ideally grow up the ranks and do something good, right? And back then there were obviously very charismatic figures in the Italian economic landscape, right? People like Avvocato Agnelli, who was 4 years at the helm of the Fiat Group, and a few others. So the ambition was, I didn't really know what it was because, as I said, there was an internet, the ability of learning something depending on you having access to somebody who knew that thing and you could go and ask, right? So bluntly put, I started in McKinsey without really knowing, right, what McKinsey was about, but I knew that it was a gateway to a professional career. And I was lucky enough to get to meet somebody who was already in the firm, explain me how it worked, right? And I was lucky enough to be able to go through the very demanding recruiting process that they have and successfully pass it, and then learn more and appreciate about what consulting was all about. Which I said was great, but with some limitation compared to, let's say, my ambitions and my personality trait in that respect. So yes, that's what motivated the young Luca, as you call it before.
I see. And so, how do you reflect this? So, from your from your experience with your kids, how do you try to inspire them? And I don't know, because I bet you hope for them to have more or less the same path that you had, no, to be tried, or at least just to be successful.
Yes, that's the last bit, which is the one that matters, in the sense that I'm not necessarily keen for my kids to follow my path. What I'm keen about is that they do something that they're passionate about, and they do it to excel and succeed. And whatever that is, I will respect. Of course, I will try not to guide them or to drive them, but at least to have them think hard about the choices that they're making, because clearly some choices have also implications in terms of what your reasonable expectation of life standard will be, right? And there are many jobs, right, which are very, very, very honorable, and unfortunately do not necessarily compensate the people that they do those jobs, right, in a level which will allow them to have certain type of standard of living. And since I have to say, my kids have been blessed enough to be exposed to a family who allow them to, let's say, live in different locations, travel around the world, because both my wife and I are passionate travelers, and every saving that we have, that's where it goes. And so if they say, I would like to do this, but that particular venue, right, is not one which realistically will allow them to have a certain standard of living, I say, yes, that's great. Do it. Have you thought about this? How can you balance the two things? You need to jump into your own decisions with open eyes and knowing what the implications about that are. So as long as you do that in that way, and you don't expect mom and dad to keep being your funding party, right, for the rest of your life, then it's perfectly fine, right? So it's more about them choosing their own way, in a way that they're committed to, and not because it's something that we've chosen for them. I've seen way too many people who are miserable, millionaires, but they're miserable because potentially they've been, let's say, taking a road which was paved for them by their parents, but it's not something that they're passionate about inside. And I think you can be very sad even if you're very rich, just because that's not something for you.
I see. And how do you see, let's say, the part of social media into this? Because as you mentioned, for you, during your childhood, I mean, you didn't have this, right? I guess what could have been like a difficult situation for you, right? At the end, you had your parents, you had your environment around you, but nowadays I feel like the environment is way more threatening because of social media itself. Or what do you say? Or for you, it's not a big deal, or?
No, I think social media are a very interesting, fascinating, and delicate topic at the same time, right? Because on one side, they give you the degree of access to information, right, which is very easy and accessible. Everybody today can become, let's say, a speaker to the world, which is something that in the past, forget it, right? That was a privilege limited to few who really had a powerful, let's say, role or position within
like
society.
Me and Flavio right now.
Right?
Yes.
No one would listen to us.
Yeah. Today, you have the ability of shaping the world, right, with your podcast or other, let's say, social media related activities, right, which you may come up with. At the same time, right, social media make it so that the world can see you, right, and therefore, if you're successful, if you're good, and if you get millions of likes, it's great. But if you don't, right, somebody who yesterday may not feel like I'm a failure, today they may feel like, hey, I'm failed. You know what? I have less than 1 million likes. I have less than X million followers. And that, if you're not, let's say, mentally prepared or solid enough in your, let's say, personality, in your thinking process, etc., right, can give life to a lot of downside and a lot of negative effects, right? So it's important to be able to handle right? Know it, use it, but with maturity and with a smart attitude.
I think it's pretty. I don't know if dangerous or not for young kids, because when you go on Instagram, you see all these people that they live like a happy life. They have like a perfect body, perfect life, and they want that because they think it's the standard. Like when you go on the news feed on Instagram, you're watching just, I think, the 0.1% of all the people that are on Instagram, and they make those videos like it's reality. That at least it's not.
Yeah.
That's why I think many young kids, young girls are like scared or not being like them.
Yeah.
How do you manage the relation of your kids with social media in this case?
I think it's important as a parent to be present, right? To be there as a sounding board, to be there also in a way as a referee or as a limiting factor in some instances, right?
Yeah.
My 12 years old daughter, right? She has access to social media, but in a certain way. At times, maybe she has more than she should have. TikTok is one that we still struggle with, right?
You should put the parental control.
I think we try to, rather than enforce, to coach, right? I'm not necessarily in favor of, let's say, hardcore restriction in that respect.
Okay.
We have to resort, at times we resort to even more drastic measures, which is, okay, just give me the phone.
Yeah, and go to bed.
And end of the story for the day, right? But no, that's where, again, it goes back to the role that as a parent you play as an educator, right? And it applies to social media, it applies to relationship between peers at school, in your everyday life, and all of these kind of things. But again, that's where many people suffer, right? Because again, they may not have the care and the support from the parents or from somebody more mature around them, right? To give them the right perspective on things. And that's a good example because I have a good friend of mine. He's an advisor to a large number of billionaire families in Europe. And what he tells me is, Luca, you will be amazed, right? Many of the kids of these families, right? They're pretty much left to their own devices just because their parents are so rich, they don't have time and or interest for them, right? And these kids are so fragile because they're in their late teens, early 20s, but being disliked or not recognized on social media can be a reason of a crisis, right? A lack of identity, a failure of a life, right? So that's where, unfortunately, if there's not the right kind of support in that respect, and there's not the right level of maturity at the level of the individual, it can be pretty nasty.
You want to ask a question because I still want to talk about social media.
You want to go on with social media? No,
No,
actually,
no,
I wanted to switch topic, but no, go on.
Okay, you're the boss.
No, come on, then you're going to tell
No,
me,
no,
I
no,
couldn't
no.
ask that question.
No,
blah,
no,
blah,
okay,
blah.
no.
Go
Ask
on.
your last question. Come on.
Last one. I'll give it to you. Last one. I'm joking. You can ask as many as you want.
No, okay. No, I'm really interested about the social
Yeah, it's
media,
really
especially
interesting,
with teens also, because our last guest is like really busy with bullyism, cyberbullyism, because he said that it's I think 1/3 or something like that. I don't remember the ratio right now. They suffer and they're like. And it's like you said, if they don't reach a number of likes on Instagram, they feel sad and everything. Or there is sometimes we were also talking. He said sometimes it happened that there are like revenge porn on internet, and when of girls or boys, they're like 15, 16, and how can you manage it inside of head of of a teen? So that's why I've asked you also about the relationship that you have with social media, because I think it's really important nowadays to have controls on the social media of the kids, because you never know what they can see, because you have access to a number of information that are above your age. Like I'm 15, but if I go on Google, I can see wherever you want. Before it was not like this.
That's true.
You're like 12, 13, you play with your toys and everything, you go out with people of your age. That's it. you had your life step by step. Right now, I see like girls on internet. They're like girls, like I don't know, like
Small women.
yeah, like people of 12, 13. They look like women. Like it's
Adults.
crazy. Yeah. I don't know. I'm a bit concerned about this topic
No, as
because
you said, it's not an easy topic. It's
Yeah.
one that does and should keep, let's say, wake up at night a few parents, probably more than it is currently the case. But as I was saying before, I think the cure to that is to establish a very open and regular dialogue with your kids, right?
I'm no expert,
Yes.
but
Now,
I think
now,
yes.
now, again, I'm no expert either, despite having 3 kids, and I think there's no such thing as an expert parent, and we do mistakes every single day as parents, and you just need to learn and try to minimize the amount of mistakes that you make. In the eyes of your kids, you'll always have made the wrong choice, but I like to think that 15, 20 years from now, when they will turn back, right, they will say, hey, you know what, Dad, Mom, you actually did something right. And the proof will be in the way that will be available to grow over the years and overcome all these difficulties that an environment like the current one offer them. But again, every age has its own challenges and difficulties, right? I don't think that for teenagers who grew up in the Middle Ages, right, life was any better. Yes, there was no social media, but you didn't know if you would have had some food on your plate when you
Yeah.
got back home, or if you got back home in the first place, because if you got kidnapped or stuff, right, nobody would even know. Our grandparents who went through the wars, again, I don't think they had a better lifestyle. So in a way, this is an age of privilege in the sense that I think our kids are probably the generation of kids who receive the most, at least in terms of abundance and availability of things, inverted comma, right? But at times, maybe this comes at the expense of scarcity of feelings and emotions or care from some parents who now are more, let's say, focused on the things rather than on the relationships. So, as said, I guess every age brings its own complexities and challenges. And social media, on one side, they're a great thing, I said, because they give the ability to everyone to have a voice and be heard from the world. On the other side, you need to be able to handle that because otherwise, instead of being on the positive side, can turn out into being quite a negative or let's say difficult experience. I'm not a big social media guy, right? I don't post. I have a LinkedIn profile which I've had for the past, I don't know, 25, 30 years, but that's more for me a way of being in contact with the network. So that I know that anywhere I go, in absence of having something in my, let's say, contact book, I know how to reach out or how people can reach out to me, especially given how mobile we've been as a family. I have an Instagram account with my last post was probably 4 years ago or so, but you wouldn't see a picture of any member of my family. It's more a collection of nice places where I've been or images which I think capture an emotion or something that I think it's nice to share. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't have a Twitter account, which doesn't mean that that's the right way of doing it. It's just that in my, let's say, priorities of time allocation, right? Time for social media has not exactly been a priority. And so probably something to focus on in my later part of my life and career, because a clear gap to be built upon.
So you don't share short video on TikTok?
No. My little young has tried hard, right, to loop me into those, but she saw that actually the outcome wasn't really accretive to the video that she had to produce herself without my presence. So she's better off without me.
But it's funny because on TikTok you can also find videos from, let's say, so-called financial advisors. Do you remember there was one guy who was super funny. He said, you know what, if you invest, if you go to a bank and ask for, I don't know, 100,000 euros, it would take, or let's say you want a loan for your house, you can get 1 million and you have to pay back in, I don't know, 30 years, right?
If you go with a gun, they will give you directly.
Else you can just steal the money, right? You go to the jail for 5 years and then you don't have to pay it back. And he's like, follow me for more financial advices.
That sounds very sound financial advice indeed. Yeah.
Don't do fraud,
Not sure
guys.
about it.
No, actually something a bit the boring one, but no, actually,
So you want to change topic?
no, actually the closure on cyberbullying. I mean, cyberbullying might be harmful, but the slaps for my grandma were probably way more. But no, jokes aside, one thing that I really want to ask, like, for people, especially that maybe are starting their own career right now, that actually was also my case. I wanted to, start a job in banking. What, from your point of view, what do you like and dislike about the CIB compared to the private banking part?
So
what do you?
I think I like different things in both, right? In the sense that CIB is a very high pressure environment. It's very visible as a business, right? Because it goes on the front pages of the financial newspapers with large transactions like M&As, IPOs, right? Yeah. So it's a large transaction where you get in touch with senior management of companies, large deals. So it's very team-oriented because there are large teams of people who work around it. So it pays well, much better probably than many other businesses that we can think of. So it's a very nice business to be into. But probably, right, there's only a limited number, right, of people in the chain and of the team who actually have client contact, right? And therefore, there's a lot of background work that needs to be done, which is not necessarily seen, appreciated, or rewarded. But there are actually a large number of people in the back room, right, sweating blood and tears to make sure that somebody on the front can actually excel, succeed, and deliver. It's also a job which has a high mortality rate in the sense that of the analysts who start as an investment banker, probably a minute percentage will make it to the top because it's a pretty brutal life. And again, the more you go up as well, the more the number of slots available shrinks because there are only so many places which are available to give advice to the C-suite of the Fortune 500 companies. So I think it's a very good job, especially at the beginning of your career, even if you don't make it all the way through, because you develop a good skill set, good experience, good working ethic, and a set of knowledge, which then you can redeploy in many other, let's say, professional activities. Private banking I like a lot because I think it's a very, let's say, rich, fulfilling, and rewarding job, both on the content side, but as well, and more importantly, also on the relationship side. Because ultimately, you're dealing with ultra high net worth individuals who, in their own rights, they're like potentially small companies or even large ones, actually, oftentimes, right? These are complex cases who tend to have needs on both sides of the balance sheet. So in terms of financing, investment, they have an international profile because they happen to have businesses or real estate properties scattered around the world. They have succession plan needs because maybe they have more than one kid, potentially from more than one wife. So they tend to be pretty complex type of situations. Right?
Diversification,
Diversifying the risk,
portfolio.
right? Exactly. Some of them view it that way. Again, I'm not sure it diversifies the risk in that case, rather than multiplying the risk. But who am I to judge? I'm not one of my clients, probably for a reason. So they must be.
You can also increase the pleasure, right?
Yeah, again, it depends on what people gain pleasure from. But yes, again, I'm a convinced monogamist, so I'm not best placed to let's say, give advice on the front, and therefore I will just limit myself in the areas where I think I've had some value to add. But also private banking, go back to your point before, wealth management, depending how people call it, right? I think it's probably a career which is better suited, at least for front office type of job and relationship management type of job, for somebody who's a bit more senior, let's say, in their career. in a sense that oftentimes we have juniors joining from universities, right, coming doing stages, graduation program, and rightly so, right, it's great. They want to grow and they want to develop a career in a particular space. But there's an element of, let's say, reality checkpoint that they need to be aware of, right? It is not realistic that they say, hey, I just got out of university. I want to be a relationship manager, right? So I would like to be the relationship manager of high-profile clients. Reality is wealth is still very much concentrated, right, in a population of single-digit percent number of the whole population, with an average which is more than 55, 60 years, right? So how credible can a 20-something years old who's had few months of university as their background, right, to go in front of a client like that and be able to have a conversation, a knowledge, and a relationship, right, in which the client can relate them as a peer-to-peer, right? These people have been around for a while. They've gone through a million crises, right? .com is, for them, is like yesterday, right? Before then, there was the oil crisis, right? You go back to the early 70s or whatever. Argentinian bonds blowing up, right? So it's difficult for them to engage with somebody and give the credibility to somebody, right, who's not been around and seen things for a while. You don't need to have been around for 40 years, but sure, you must have been around for more than 2 or 3 before you can develop a certain type of relationship with credibility. Different story, of course, if you start talking next gen, right? Yes, the more junior, let's say, employees are probably better geared, right, to start focusing on the next gen, but that's still, let's say, a thin layer of the wealth which is available, and something which will take more time to develop further, right? So they need to be patient, they need to be realistic, understand how things work, and therefore grow through the ranks over time, but not be too impatient in terms of expectations.
What is the, let's say, the toughest challenge that you faced with the client, if you can say it?
I don't think it's a matter of a challenge, right? I think the important thing is if you develop the trust relationship, right, with somebody.
How can you gain the trust of a client?
The trust of the client is gained by developing a dialogue which is built on solid basis over time, right? Which needs to start from a, let's say, understanding of your client. The worst mistake that I can think of is of somebody entering the room in front of a client and saying, I think you should buy this fund. I think you should do this. I think you should do that, right?
So let's imagine I'm a new client. What is the first thing you say when you enter in the room?
The first thing is about learning about you. Because ultimately, right, it's like, people will hate to say it, right? But it's like going to the doctor or like going to your personal trainer, right? The client of a private bank is a very similar type of situation, in my view, in the sense that if you do not know, okay, what is it that you are solving for in terms of what are your objectives, right? If you don't know, okay, what are your fears? What is your starting point? What are your issues? What are your problems? What keeps you up at night? So the very first step is a very thorough scanning, right, of the overall client situation, which allows you to really understand. So that's why, again, that's not something that you develop in a day, because nobody will open up to you first time you meet with somebody. But the important thing is to make sure that these people understand that you're there for them. This is not a transaction. This is a lifelong relationship that you want to build and develop with somebody, with clear rules of engagement between the parts, right? I won't engage with you in a transactional relationship. I don't expect to be exploited by you as a client just to get the best pricing out of every single transaction. So the point is, let's understand what is it that keeps you up at night? What are the objectives that you want to achieve? What is the best way to achieve those objectives based on a set of solutions that we share, we discuss, you're comfortable with, and then we go together hand in hand, right, over the years. And those objectives will change over time because it's different when you're in your early 30s with a young family, when you grow up into something bigger, when you then you're pretty much done and you want to walk out of your business, when then you need to go into a succession plan with your, let's say, kids or grandkids or whatever, right? But that's really the essence, is exactly having the kind of relationship, being there for them, knowing that they can trust you. You're not supposed to know everything, but you're supposed to be the guy who can put them in touch with a specialist in your bank who can give an answer to any question that they have. So you're in a way like, exactly, they're trusted advisor. That's what a private banker really is.
But in your position that you have now, but also in the past, you were responsible for the development of new business. So with like, I don't know, maybe cold callings, new clients, or you already had the portfolio?
No, in my role, I'm responsible for the business. I have teams in my location who are responsible to manage the relationship with the client.
Okay.
So ultimately, they are responsible to build and develop the portfolio.
Okay.
I play a role in the way of, again, as part of my role, I will come across people. I will strike relationship. And therefore, I will introduce some of the relationship managers who are best placed to, let's say, manage on a day-to-day basis that relationship to the relevant relationship manager for that particular market, and with the required kind of expertise, profile, skill set, and so on and so forth. And similarly, the relationship manager will invite me and ask me to tag along with them to go and meet clients, right? Because they see the benefit of having my presence as part of the conversation and giving the client the comfort about the commitment that we have to a particular market, to a particular family, to a particular group, right? And help them out to get the best out of the relationship that they have with Deutsche Bank.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting.
Actually, do you want to ask something more about the, I want to change a little bit. So we said to depressure, you said, traveling plays a big part, and sports. What do you like to do? What Luca, when it's clocking out from
Luca,
Deutsche
when
Bank,
clocking out, well, it's more than clocking in, because I found out over the years that clocking out generally was not a good strategy to do sport, because unfortunately it's very easy to get caught into your, let's say, long list of to-dos, emergencies, calls, clients, meetings, or whatever. So trying to go to the gym, say, 8 p.m. at night, didn't really work. And plus, I found out that that's the only time that I actually managed to spend some time with my family during the week, which is dinner time. So sport is kind of the start of the day type of thing. So you wake up at 6 in the morning, out of the house by 6:20, in the gym by 6:45. So I have my daily, let's say, routine going to the gym. But even there, I try to keep it as varied as possible, as it can possibly be, because again, I get bored pretty easily as a personality. So I like to do a mix between weightlifting, intensity training, yoga, cardio, you name it, right? And then this is the, let's say, the weekly routine before going into the office. Weekend, generally a mix of two things, right? At times I try and go and play squash because I have more degrees of freedom in terms of timing when I can do things. So I recently found a center here in Luxembourg, which is actually pretty good. So I started again playing squash after a window of 6-8 months during which I couldn't practice. And or, let's say, new things. For example, this weekend my wife, as said, wasn't around because she was in the UK. My 16 years old, I enrolled him just before, in Q4 last year, to a gym where he started doing kickboxing. So we did a run from home to the gym. We went into the ring together. We did a bit of sparring, kickboxing together. So it was a fun thing to do. So that's, let's say, the ordinary, let's say, type of sports that we generally do. And my big love in terms of sport, but that's unfortunately once a year, maybe twice if you're lucky, is skiing. So that's what happens generally during the Christmas season, when with the family we go and we ski.
Nice. I was worried you would say paddle, but luckily.
No, I never played it. I know it's very popular and seems to be coming up in terms of exactly popularity in general. I yet haven't had the opportunity to test it, but hey, I'm open to it. Why not?
You should try, yeah.
So if any of you plays padel and wants to have a go and
I never
try,
played. I just think
that's
that
a
you
good start
should.
then.
Yeah. All right. I never play. I prefer tennis. Yeah.
Okay.
Padel, I don't know. I'm not gonna say anything about padel because everyone is playing. So all people that are
So it must
will
be
watch.
good, right?
Yeah, or easy.
I don't know.
But and actually, okay, skiing. I agree. I like it. Gym
You know how to
as
ski?
well. Yeah, when I can. I mean, when my foot is not hurt. But yeah. But squash. Actually, what do you like about it? Because
What I like about
I
squash
think you're the first person I met that
is a very
sports for
intense
bankers.
sport. It is a very, very intense sport.
okay.
You have no time to think about anything else. It's probably one of the sports which demands the highest level of endurance and stamina that you can think of.
Mhm.
So I started very late in my life to play squash because I actually started during my MBA in 2001. Then there was much of an opportunity to play for quite a few years because again, in Milan, yes, there was one center where there was squash, but in Italy it's not a really popular sport. In London it is, but there's not so much in the way of facilities as you would like. Hong Kong was really the turning point because we were lucky enough to have the squash court in our building.
Inside the building.
And I was lucky enough to have a good friend, well, actually 2 or 3 friends who were all, and plus 2 or 3 colleagues who were all into squash. So back then I was probably playing 3 times a week.
But it's 1 against 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Indeed.
You cannot play in couple.
No, there are some variations which at times people try to play, but the court is small and it gets messy. So one against one, I think it's probably the safest option, even because if you play with people who swing a tennis like, it can be dangerous in a squash court. And I was myself a culprit back in the days with my best man. We played the squash game, and unfortunately, he came a bit too close to me during a game, and I happened to hit him with the racket on his eyebrow. So yes, next phase we were at the hospital in Milan, giving him 2 or 3 stitches. So yes, it can be a pretty brutal sport. Yeah, for me it was, maybe not for him. But yeah.
You laughed.
We both laughed, I guess. Right. We took it with good spirit. These are things that can happen. There was no any sort of animosity around it.
Where you play squash here in Cork?
There is a top squash center, which is just a 10 minutes drive from my office. I couldn't point it on a map because I've only been twice just before the year. But yes, it's close to where Cargolux is. And I didn't mean to make any hidden advertisement here.
Cargolux is in Finland.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
a nice center. They have many courts, and I was put in touch with somebody at the center through an acquaintance of mine. So now I need to get into the flow because, again, it's a sport that if you don't play regularly, you can be pretty miserable. It's also a pretty brutal sport because even a tiny difference in terms of a level between one player and another will lead to a 11-0 outcome, which is not great. So it's also quite delicate sport in terms of finding somebody which you are at a comparable level, which is enjoyable for both sides. But as I said, great sport.
Okay. How many minutes lasts usually
Well, generally
the
you book the court for an hour. And how long a match lasts is a function of how many rallies you do before the game is over, which if you're both at the same level can last quite a bit, but generally not because again, it's a sport in which closing the point is the nature of the game. You wouldn't have like in a tennis game some of those. There is one point which will never stop, right? And the ball going from side to side with nobody really taking the initiative to try to close the point. It's a much more aggressive, let's say, sport in that respect.
I was always curious about squash. I never played it, but I think it's funny. You want to play?
If I can smash your head, yeah. I'm joking.
He's the funny guy.
We need one, huh? There's always one in a team.
Come on,
Or in
let's
a
play.
couple.
Okay,
Or
you
in a
want to bet?
couple.
You want to bet?
Or in a couple, right?
Want to bet?
Something that a more down to earth question. This one we ask also to the other guests from Genova. If you had to rate from 1 to 10 the, let's call it pre-made pesto, right? How much? Well, what would you rate it?
Do I need to give a rating, really?
Yeah.
I think 1 is as
Okay,
high as I could push.
You're a real gentleman. Because Marco, I think he said -15.
-15.
Yes.
No, I can give 1 for the effort, but yes, I guess that unfortunately cannot be called as such, right?
And what's your favorite food from, let's say, Genova and all over the world?
Well, favorite food from Genoa, I think panzotti al sugo di noci. So it's a type of pasta which is like a big tortello, very thick and very filled. And the filling is made, now it's with spinach and ricotta.
Okay.
And then it's cooked with nut sauce, which is a very creamy type of sauce, very tasty. But unfortunately, that's a memory of the past because I've been discovered to be celiac 5 years ago, and so I had to move to a gluten-free diet since. So unfortunately, those delicacies that no longer belong to my dietary schedule. But hey, again, we need to find alternatives.
Yes.
So wait, so you cannot even eat pizza, right? Or
Pizza,
only
pasta. Listen, there are more and more gluten-free version of pretty much every food with time going by. I think
Also
with
in
mixed
Luxembourg.
success. Also in Luxembourg, yes, if you go to any supermarket, there will always be a gluten-free.
But I mean, for like the
department.
pizza, if you want to order at the restaurant.
No, restaurant, unfortunately, I can't remember the last time I had a pizza, but probably it wasn't in a restaurant, at least because nobody would have, or very few, an oven which is solely dedicated to gluten-free pizza. So the contamination risk is such that if you cook the pizza in the same oven as where you cook the normal pizza, there will be flour, let's say, floating around, and so it kind of defeats the purpose. But a decent alternative, not great, but still you have those gluten-free frozen pizza that you can cook at your own place, which is, for example, what I did last Saturday. Because I was alone with the kids, so I said, okay, let's go pizza. And they have the normal one, of course. I would not force on them the pain of going for a gluten-free one. But I have the gluten-free, but benefit of doing it at home is that you just enrich it as you like it. So the pizza is more like an excuse to have a base on which you overlay then all sorts of toppings that you like. So in a way, the pizza becomes a non-relevant in the scheme of the dish that you're cooking. What it matters is all the richness of the.
So which is your favorite? How do you top your pizza?
I top it in a way that probably is too much for too many because this time around, again, on top of the base that...
Be careful, you have a guy from Napoli next to you. So
yeah, no, probably you will just scream and shout. But of course, there's never enough sauce nor mozzarella in the one that you buy. So I like it rich. So there's
good
a
start.
good,
Okay.
it's a good start. Secondly, I did a part with pesto. Because being from Genoa, we came back from Christmas, our trip to Italy.
So you put the pesto on the pizza?
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
There's more, right?
Which is phenomenal. And I divide it in quarters, so that at least it's like having 4 different pizzas, right? Then I did one part with gorgonzola.
Okay.
Because I love it. I did one part with caramelized onions.
Okay.
So yes, actually yes, it was in 3/3 rather than in quarters this time around. So the pizza was organized pretty much in this way.
Okay, I can forgive you the pesto because it's just 1/4, so not all the pizza.
But you should try. You should try. You probably haven't tried the real pesto ever.
So you asked me to try
you can
squash.
you can
I'll
bring
ask
the
you
pizza. You can bring the proper pizza from Napoli. You can bring the proper pesto from Genoa, and then we can mix it up.
Imagine what we can do together.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. And do you have anything that other than sports that help you to the pressure? Like reading books or watching TV shows? For you, it's
So
no go or
yeah, no, I like TV. I like theaters. I like
Oh.
music. I like events. I have to say, we were reasonably active when we used to live in London because, again, the city had to offer a lot in that respect.
Yeah.
The first few months here, I said, there wasn't really much on the social scene and or on the ability of going out. So we tend to take, let's say, a reasonably utilitaristic approach. There is a dinner when we come back home. Say, we're done with dinner probably around 9:45, 10ish. So you don't want to go too long in the evening. So generally, it's one episode on Netflix that we watch with my wife or as a family if the kids are interested. So that's, I would say, let's say the weekly routine in that respect. And then after that, religiously reading before going to sleep every night. Sorry. So no, definitely. I'm a big reader, and so yeah, I read every night before going to sleep.
What's your favorite book?
Difficult to pick one, honestly. At the moment, I'm much more into, let's say, what I call light reading, which is mostly noir crime type of novels, which do not demand too much mental energy, and they're just like a good relaxing segue, hopefully moving into good sleep.
Okay, and after sleeping, once you wake up, what's the first app you open in the morning?
I don't open any app in the morning.
No?
No.
So you don't check your phone when you wake up?
No. Actually, there's the sleeping app. That's the one that I need to stop in order to check how my sleeping pattern was. That's actually the answer.
Snooze the alarm.
That's actually the answer. Bedtime, I think it's called, which analyzes your sleeping cycle in terms of number of hours, which REM phase you were into at what time, quality of the sleep, and all of this kind of things. So yes, that's the first step that I have to check, just because you need to, let's say, stop it and check how it went by. Otherwise, no, it's emails from work. But I try to be disciplined and read those only after I'm done with the gym, because the risk is if I read them before and something really catches my eye and I feel it's urgent, I end up skipping the gym and going straight into the office. But given that nobody expects an answer from me at 6:30 in the morning, I think that I can afford the luxury of, let's say, delaying that by an hour and a half or so, and checking that email at 8:30 in the morning should be good enough to deal with any emergency crisis which may have popped up overnight.
And while at the gym, what are you blasting on your earphones, earbuds, whatever you have?
No, I just use the music from the gym.
Oh, really?
Yes. I'm not a big fan of. I generally use beats, right? When I go running, just because yes, the sound of the car passing by is not exactly conducive. But when I'm in the gym, I will just go with the flow. Otherwise, yes, when I run, I would say a couple of options. Linkin Park. So that's a band which I think is really supportive of high energy, or if you want to go more light DJ style, David Guetta, right? So different styles, but I want the music which will pump the system and which will support me in my effort in that respect.
And what's your favorite Linkin Park song, if you have to pick one?
Well, in the end, is the obvious one, I guess. But again, they made so many pieces which are great.
Mine is From the Inside.
Okay.
I love it. If I really have to get pumped up, it's mine to go. Yours?
One step closer.
Okay.
I went to the concert of Linkin Park in Hong Kong, which was great.
Really?
Yeah. And it was, well, again, the lead singer was still around back then. And yes, it was a memorable evening because my daughter, the eldest one, was there probably like 12 or so. So in a way, I guess we shocked a bit. No, not even. Yeah, probably more like 10-ish. But she was into Linkin Park because I was blasting Linkin Park every time we were driving, right? Because I had all the CDs and all of that. So when they came to Hong Kong, she was like, "Oh, Dad, I want to come with you." And my wife, she's not really a hard rock fan, but nevertheless, she tagged along and joined. I guess more for lack of confidence in my ability of controlling my
Parenting.
daughter exactly during the concert
Fair
rather
point.
than anything else. But I have to say, the concert scene in Hong Kong is the most surreal one that I've ever been at, in the sense that people are so well behaved that you could not expect anything like that. Even in a concert like Linkin Park, where in any other place you may expect a bit of wilderness going on, I have to say they were so well behaved, which there was nothing to worry about for the kids. Pre-assigned seats, people hardly moving, few people just standing up and doing things.
Imagine the
right.
mosh pit. Please, gentlemen, go first. Oh no, my pleasure. Go first. Another question that I really like to do. Picture this: you're going to a restaurant for dinner. You'll sit at a table of 4, of course, with yourself. Who would you pick? And you can choose anyone from any time, so past or present, and from anywhere.
Ooh,
You have to bring three people with you.
3 people with me.
Who would they be?
Wow, that's a big one that requires quite a lot of thinking. Give me 30 seconds.
No pressure.
No pressure.
No.
Let's put some
25, 24. Yeah, we should put the music on
Yeah,
the background.
but actually,
I
I've
think-
never seen Linkin Park. I'm jealous. Sorry.
No,
Okay,
I think it will be a mix from different areas, right? Because ultimately the purpose will be to learn how they got there, right? What brought them to get there, right? So probably staying closer to our times, right? I guess somebody like Jeff Bezos, right? I think would be an interesting choice in the sense of this guy pretty much built an empire by himself in a matter of just over 10, 15 years, right? So somebody coming up with that idea out of nowhere, right? And being able to deliver and execute and becoming at the level where he reached is quite astonishing in that respect. Probably being a sport fanatic, right? Somebody from the sport arena, right? So somebody like, again, Ronaldo, right? Somebody who not only is super talented, right, but he also achieved great results thanks to his, let's say, discipline, his dedication, his commitment, right? Somebody coming from a very poor, let's say, background, and again, having built his own, let's say, career and success, and not only be successful on the field, but also being successful as an entrepreneur, as a social media, let's say, icon. Again, somebody who clearly has been able to do a lot.
Well, Cristiano Ronaldo makes more money from the social media than from
And from
football.
sport,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So exactly in that respect, it's definitely somebody to learn something from. And third one, so we need to move away from sport. We need to move away from, let's say, entrepreneurship.
Business, yeah.
So probably somebody who's been successful at achieving something. Gandhi,
Okay.
right? Somebody who, again, against all adversities, challenged and defeated, let's say, an established power, right? With the power of word, with the power of persuasion, with the power of conviction, right? So I think probably this will give me a good mix, let's say, in terms of personalities who shaped the world and achieved great results, and clearly aspirational and fulfilling in terms of what they've done.
I like that. Do you want to ask anything? I feel the more I ask, the more I want to ask. But at some point we have
that's
to.
the thing,
Huh? Yeah, but I wonder how Ronaldo would cope with pesto, though.
You think Ronaldo put the pesto on the pizza?
Probably not, because he doesn't even
He
know
doesn't
what it
eat
is.
Yeah.
I think they doesn't eat pizza.
But yeah,
But he
probably
did in
he
Turin,
would probably
so-
put it on grilled chicken, you know, because
With the
that's
pesto.
good.
yes.
And pesto
Pesto
is good
sauce.
because actually is, you know what, it's all fat and veggies. So because you have pine nuts, you have olive oil, you have Parmesan cheese, you have basil, and you have a bit of salt and a bit of garlic. So it's actually very healthy, super calorific, very tasty. But for somebody like him, who probably needs, I don't know, 5,000 calories per day, right? Given the type of sport and activity that he does, why not?
We want to ask some because you already asked the questions from the list.
Yeah. Do you have
But,
anything?
well, I don't remember actually the questions, but for me it's good. Because like it talked a lot, so
No, actually, very last one. What's your next achievement? Something that someone like you that changed jobs so many times, and business-wise and geographically wise, let's say. What's your?
this is your final location, Luxembourg.
Who knows, right? It depends how many more years they need to keep working, because again, with 3 kids, most of which still at school.
Yeah, they will go to university abroad.
They will go to university. They will get married. Let's see, right? And with few more mortgages to clear, I guess probably need another good 15 years of work before I can close shop. So happy here in Luxembourg, right? I'm here to stay. I have a long-term horizon type of commitment. So happy to be here and happy to grow here. Then if 5, 10, 15 years from now, there will be another opportunity somewhere else. So my boss calls me and say, hey, Luca, I need you here or I need you there. And that will be the right and interesting opportunity for me, right? We'll consider that.
Maybe Napoli. You know, Deutsche Bank wants to mess in Napoli.
If they need, exactly, right? Branch
Pesto on
manager in
pizza.
Naples, right? Why not? Why not?
Yeah.
I hear it's a great place. I have friends from Naples, and I've been there, unfortunately, only once as part of one of my projects back in McKinsey. But it was one of those fly in and out, same day type of situation. So I really cannot say that I really managed to get to experience the city. But definitely, I hear great things.
I'm really proud of my city.
It's surely a gap, and it's surely one of the destinations for my wife and myself to go on a trip to. Again, we have a long list of places that we need to go to. The world is way too big, and so hopefully when flights go back to a bit more of a normal regime, there will be a chance for a long weekend there to start with as a minimum.
I think we can close it.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and
It's been my
real
pleasure. No, thanks a lot to you guys, and all the
Thank
best. Thank you.